The roar of the blaze ripped through the quiet night as Ben Harding jerked awake, the acrid smell of smoke seeping under his apartment door. His first thought was not for himself, but for his 8-year-old daughter Emma, sleeping peacefully in the next room. Seconds later, he was scooping her into his arms, heart pounding as he wrapped her in a blanket. "Daddy," she mumbled sleepily. "Fire in the building, sweetheart. We need to go now," Ben said, keeping his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. Years of working construction had taught him to stay calm in emergencies. The single father grabbed his phone and keys before heading into the hallway of their third-floor apartment. The corridor was already filling with smoke, the cheap carpeting of the aging apartment complex beginning to smolder. Neighbors were stumbling out of their units, confused and frightened. Ben quickly assessed the situation. The stairwell at the west end was already engulfed in flames, which meant they needed to head east. "Everyone, this way," he shouted, guiding several elderly neighbors toward the remaining exit. With Emma clinging to his neck, Ben shepherded the small group down 2 flights of stairs before they reached the ground floor. Outside, the cool night air was a sharp contrast to the suffocating heat they'd escaped. Fire trucks wailed in the distance. Ben set Emma down on the grass a safe distance from the building. "Stay right here with Mrs. Rodriguez," he instructed, nodding to their elderly neighbor who had become Emma's unofficial grandmother since Ben's wife had died 3 years ago. "But Daddy," Emma protested, her eyes wide with fear. 2 minutes, Em, I promise. I heard someone calling for help on the 4th floor. Ben squeezed her hand. "I'll be right back." Before anyone could stop him, Ben was sprinting back into the burning building. The smoke was thicker now, forcing him to crouch low as he took the stairs 2 at a time. The 4th floor was a maze of flame and shadow. He pulled his T-shirt over his nose and mouth as he moved down the hallway. "Hello? Anyone here?" he called out, his voice barely carrying over the crackle of flames eating through the walls. A faint cry answered him from apartment 412. Ben tried the door locked. Without hesitation, he rammed his shoulder against it once, twice, then a 3rd time. The wood splintered, and he stumbled into the smoke-filled living room. "Help," came a weak voice from the bathroom. Ben found her hunched on the floor of the bathroom, a wet towel pressed to her face. She was wearing silk pajamas that looked absurdly expensive against the dingy tile. Her eyes, a striking amber color, were wide with fear and relief. "I've got you," Ben said, not wasting time on introductions. He scooped her up in his arms, noticing she was lighter than she looked. "Keep that towel over your face." The journey back was harrowing. The fire had spread rapidly, cutting off their original escape route. Ben's lungs burned, but he pressed on, carrying the woman down a secondary stairwell that was rapidly filling with smoke. When they finally burst through the exit door, the cool night air felt like a miracle. Paramedics rushed toward them as Ben gently set the woman down on a stretcher. "Emma," he gasped, scanning the crowd of evacuated residents. "Daddy." His daughter broke free from Mrs. Rodriguez and flew into his arms. Ben hugged her tightly, relief washing over him. "Sir, we need to check you for smoke inhalation," a paramedic insisted, guiding Ben toward an ambulance. It wasn't until hours later, sitting on the edge of the ambulance with an oxygen mask and Emma asleep against his shoulder, that Ben learned the woman's name. A paramedic mentioned it as they closed her ambulance doors. Fiona Lynch. It meant nothing to him then. The fire had ravaged half the apartment building, including Ben's unit. By morning, as emergency services processed the displaced residents, Ben faced the grim reality that everything he owned was gone. The small savings he'd managed to put aside working construction jobs would barely cover a security deposit on a new place, let alone replace their belongings. "It's okay, Daddy," Emma said, sitting beside him on a cot at the Red Cross shelter. "We still have each other." Ben hugged her close, amazed at her resilience. "That's right, kiddo, and that's what matters most." 3 days later, Ben was filling out paperwork at the shelter when a woman in a tailored pantsuit approached him. It took a moment before he recognized her, the woman from the fire, though now she looked remarkably different. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and despite a small bandage on her forehead, she carried herself with unmistakable authority. "Mr. Harding," she asked. Ben stood, suddenly conscious of his rumpled t-shirt and jeans. "Yes, that's me. Fiona Lynch," she said, extending her hand. "I believe I owe you my life." Her handshake was firm, professional. Up close, those amber eyes were even more striking. "Anyone would have done the same," Ben said awkwardly. "Not anyone," Fiona replied. Her gaze shifted to Emma, who was coloring nearby. "And is this your daughter, Emma?" Ben confirmed. Come say hello to Miss Lynch." Emma approached cautiously, clutching her colored pencils. "Are you the lady Daddy saved from the fire?" Fiona smiled, crouching down to Emma's level. "I am, and I wanted to thank him and meet you." "We lost Bunny in the fire," Emma said solemnly, referring to her beloved stuffed animal. "And all our stuff." Ben placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "We've got the important things, remember?" Fiona stood, her expression thoughtful. "Mr. Harding, I understand you're staying here temporarily. I'd like to help if you'll let me." Ben's pride stiffened his spine. "That's very kind, but we'll manage, Dad." Emma tugged at his shirt. "We don't even have a place to live." Fiona's lips quirked in a smile. "Your daughter is practical. Please, at least let me offer you temporary housing while you get back on your feet. I own several properties, and I have a 2-bedroom apartment sitting empty right now." "I couldn't possibly. Consider it rent-free for 3 months," Fiona continued. "No strings attached. After that, we can discuss a reasonable arrangement if you wish to stay longer." Ben hesitated. The shelter was cramped and noisy, hardly a place for Emma to feel secure after their ordeal. And finding an affordable apartment in this city with his limited funds and no rental history was proving nearly impossible. "Why would you do this for strangers?" he asked. Fiona's professional demeanor softened slightly. "Because I'm alive to do it, thanks to you." That afternoon, Fiona drove them to an apartment in a quiet neighborhood across town. Ben had expected something modest, but the spacious, modern unit with gleaming hardwood floors and large windows left him speechless. "This is temporary?" he asked as Emma raced from room to room in delight. Fiona shrugged. "It's one of our corporate housing units for visiting executives, rarely used these days with video conferencing." She handed him a set of keys. "The fridge is stocked, and there are some basic necessities in the bathrooms. If you need anything else, my number is on the counter." Before Ben could properly thank her, she was gone, leaving him standing in an apartment worth more than he would earn in several years. 2 days later, Ben was surprised to find Fiona at his door again, this time with a small pink box. "I brought something for Emma," she explained. "May I come in?" Ben stepped aside, curious. Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table and looked up in surprise. "Miss Lynch has something for you," Ben said. Fiona placed the box in front of Emma. "I heard you lost something important in the fire." Emma opened the box and gasped. Inside was a stuffed rabbit, not identical to her lost bunny, but somehow perfect in its own way. "It's beautiful," she whispered, hugging it to her chest. "I can't replace what was lost," Fiona said gently, "but sometimes new friends can help us remember the old ones." The genuine kindness in the gesture caught Ben off guard. This woman didn't fit his mental image of a wealthy property owner. There was something sincere in her interactions with Emma that suggested this wasn't merely about repaying a debt. "Would you like to stay for dinner?" Ben found himself asking. "Nothing fancy, just pasta, but there's plenty." Surprise flickered across Fiona's face, followed by what seemed like genuine pleasure. "I'd like that very much." Over a simple meal of spaghetti and garlic bread, Ben learned that Fiona wasn't just a property owner but the CEO of Lynch Innovations, a technology company specializing in sustainable energy solutions. She spoke passionately about her work, but with a humility that belied her success. "Daddy builds things too," Emma chimed in. "He can fix anything." "Is that so?" Fiona asked, looking at Ben with new interest. Ben shrugged. "Construction work mostly, some carpentry on the side when I can get it." "He made my bed at our old apartment," Emma continued proudly. "And a special bookshelf with a secret compartment." "That sounds impressive," Fiona said. "I've always admired people who can create with their hands." Ben felt a flush of pride at her words, though he quickly reminded himself not to read too much into them. She was being kind, that was all. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Fiona her drawings, and to Ben's surprise, the CEO sat patiently on the sofa, examining each crayon creation with genuine interest. There was something refreshingly unguarded about her outside her professional context. When Fiona finally left, promising to check in on them soon, Ben found himself standing at the window watching her sleek car pull away, wondering why the apartment suddenly felt emptier. The following week, Ben secured a construction job at a site downtown. The pay was decent, but the hours were long, creating a childcare dilemma. Mrs. Rodriguez had been Emma's after-school caretaker, but she was staying with her daughter on the other side of town until the apartment building was repaired. Ben was on his lunch break, frantically calling childcare centers that were all either full or beyond his budget when his phone rang. It was Fiona. "How are you settling in?" she asked. "Great, thanks," Ben replied, not wanting to burden her with his problems. "I found work, actually." "That's wonderful. And Emma, how's she adjusting?" Ben hesitated. "She's good, resilient kid. I'm just trying to figure out after school care now that I'm working again." There was a pause on the line. "I might have a solution if you're interested." Lynch Innovations has an on-site childcare facility for employees. We have a few open spots, and I could arrange for Emma to go there after school. "I couldn't possibly, Ben," she interrupted, using his first name for the first time. "It would be no trouble." "The center is excellent, with qualified staff and educational activities. Emma would love it." The solution was too perfect to refuse, despite his pride. By the end of the week, Emma was enrolled in the center, thriving among the children of Lynch Innovations employees. Ben would pick her up after his shift, occasionally catching glimpses of Fiona through the glass walls of her corner office. Sometimes, she would see him and wave, or even come down to chat briefly. Each interaction left Ben feeling strangely energized, though he reminded himself repeatedly that she was just being kind to the man who had saved her life. Nothing more. 3 weeks after the fire, Ben received a call from Fiona that surprised him. "I have a proposition for you," she said. "Our corporate headquarters is undergoing renovations to our executive floor. The contractor we hired is overbooked and falling behind. One of my employees mentioned you have experience with high-end carpentry work." "Some," Ben admitted. "Mostly custom furniture and finish work." "Would you consider taking on a project for us? The main boardroom needs custom shelving and a conference table. It would be a separate contract from your current job, but the pay would be competitive." Ben was stunned by the offer. "Are you sure?" "I mean, I don't have a portfolio, or Emma showed me photos of your work on her phone," Fiona said, a smile in her voice. "You're talented, Ben, and I trust you." The project was exactly what Ben needed: a chance to showcase his craftsmanship and earn additional income to rebuild their lives. He worked weekends and evenings after his regular job, crafting a conference table that blended modern design with traditional woodworking techniques. It was during those late evenings at Lynch Innovations that Ben began to see a different side of Fiona. She often worked late, stopping by to check on his progress or bring him coffee. Sometimes they would talk for hours about everything and nothing: Emma's progress in school, Ben's dreams of starting his own furniture business someday, Fiona's challenges running a company in a male-dominated industry. "Did you always want to be a CEO?" Ben asked one night as they sat on a tarp-covered floor, sharing takeout Chinese food. Fiona laughed, the sound warm in the empty building. "God, no, I wanted to be a marine biologist. But my father founded the company, and when he died unexpectedly 6 years ago, I stepped in temporarily." She twirled noodles around her fork. "Somehow temporary became permanent. Do you regret it?" She considered the question seriously. "Sometimes. It's not the life I imagined. But we're doing important work, creating sustainable solutions that make a difference." She looked up at him. "What about you? Always want to work with wood?" Ben nodded. "Ever since I was a kid. My grandfather was a carpenter, taught me everything I know. There's something about taking raw material and creating something beautiful and useful." He smiled ruefully. "Not the most lucrative career choice for a single dad, though." "Emma's mother?" Fiona asked carefully. "Cancer," Ben replied softly. 3 years ago, Emma was 5. Fiona's hand briefly touched his. "I'm sorry." "We're okay," Ben said, surprised to find he meant it. For the first time since Lisa's death, he felt like they truly were. As the boardroom project neared completion, Ben found himself inventing reasons to extend the timeline, reluctant for these evenings with Fiona to end. There was an ease between them now, a friendship that had developed naturally despite their different worlds. The night he finished the installation, Fiona brought champagne. "To new beginnings," she toasted, clinking her plastic cup against his. Ben looked around at the finished boardroom. His craftsmanship would be part of important decisions made in this space for years to come. "It turned out pretty well, didn't it? It's magnificent," Fiona said sincerely. "The board will be impressed." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Fiona spoke again. "You know, the 3-month mark on your apartment is coming up soon." Ben's stomach tightened. He'd been so focused on work and rebuilding their finances that he'd almost forgotten the temporary nature of their living situation. "Right, we should talk about rent, or actually," Fiona interrupted, "I have another proposition." Ben raised an eyebrow, curious. "Lynch Innovations is launching a new furniture line, sustainable materials, modern design with traditional craftsmanship. We need someone to head the design department." She took a breath. "I'd like that someone to be you." Ben stared at her in disbelief. "Me?" "Fiona, I'm a construction worker who does carpentry on the side. I don't have the credentials to. You have the talent and vision," she countered. "The rest can be learned. I've seen your work, Ben. It's exceptional." The offer was life-changing, a salary that would provide stability for him and Emma, creative work he was passionate about, regular hours that would let him be more present for his daughter. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, needing to understand. "Is it still because I pulled you from that fire?" Fiona set down her cup, her expression serious. "At first, yes, I wanted to help because you saved my life, but now," she took a step closer to him, "now it's because I believe in you, because I've seen how you work, how you think, how you care for Emma. The company would be lucky to have you." There was something in her eyes, something beyond professional appreciation, that made Ben's heart race. But before he could identify it, the moment was broken by her phone ringing. "I need to take this," she said apologetically. "Think about the offer, okay? No pressure." As Ben drove home that night, his mind was a whirlwind. The job offer was incredible, but it was his complicated feelings for Fiona that kept him awake into the early hours. Was he imagining the connection between them? And even if he wasn't, would someone like her, successful, sophisticated, wealthy, ever seriously consider someone like him? The following Sunday, Ben took Emma to the park, needing fresh air to clear his head. They were at the playground when he spotted a familiar figure jogging along the path. Fiona, dressed in leggings and a sweatshirt, hair pulled back in a ponytail, looked remarkably different from the polished CEO he was accustomed to seeing. She noticed them and changed course, jogging over with a warm smile. "Fancy meeting you here," she said, slightly breathless. "Miss Lynch." Emma exclaimed. "Want to see how high I can swing?" "Absolutely," Fiona agreed, following Emma to the swings. Ben watched in amazement as the CEO of a major corporation spent the next half hour pushing his daughter on the swings, racing her down slides and helping her across the monkey bars. Fiona's laughter was uninhibited, her joy genuine. When Emma ran off to join some school friends she'd spotted, Fiona collapsed onto the bench beside Ben. "Your daughter is incredible," she said, her cheeks flushed from exertion. "She likes you," Ben replied. "She doesn't warm up to people easily since her mom died." Fiona's expression softened. "I'm honored." She hesitated before adding, "Have you thought about the job offer?" Ben nodded slowly. "I have. It's an amazing opportunity, Fiona, truly, but I can't help wondering if it's the right fit." "Why wouldn't it be?" "Because," Ben said carefully, "I don't want to be a charity case or a debt you feel you need to repay." Fiona turned to face him fully. "Is that what you think this is?" "I don't know what this is," Ben admitted. "You've done so much for us already: the apartment, the childcare, the boardroom project. Now a job offer that could change our lives. It's overwhelming." "Ben," Fiona said softly, "I'm not offering you these things out of obligation. I'm offering them because—" She paused, seeming to search for the right words. "Because I've never met anyone like you, someone who would run into a burning building for a stranger. Someone who puts his daughter first always. Someone who creates beauty with his hands and doesn't even realize how exceptional that is." The intensity in her eyes made his breath catch. Fiona, the truth is, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, I find myself inventing reasons to see you, to talk to you. That's not charity or obligation, that's something else entirely. The admission hung between them, fragile and momentous. Ben realized with sudden clarity that his feelings weren't one-sided after all. I think about you too, he said finally. Probably more than I should. A slow smile spread across Fiona's face, lighting up her amber eyes. And is that a problem? It could be complicated, Ben replied honestly. You're a CEO. I'm a single dad still figuring things out. Those are pretty different worlds. Maybe, Fiona agreed. Or maybe they're just different parts of the same world. I'd like to find out if you would. Before Ben could respond, Emma came running back, full of excitement about her friends and completely oblivious to the moment she'd interrupted. Can Miss Lynch come have ice cream with us, Dad? Please? Ben looked at Fiona, a question in his eyes. I'd love to, she said, if your dad doesn't mind. That afternoon stretched into evening as they got ice cream, visited a bookstore at Emma's request, and eventually ended up back at Ben's apartment for an impromptu dinner. Emma insisted Fiona stay to watch a movie, and by the time it ended, the little girl had fallen asleep with her head in Fiona's lap. She's completely out, Fiona whispered, gently stroking Emma's hair. Ben carefully lifted his daughter. Let me put her to bed, I'll be right back. When he returned, Fiona was standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. There was something vulnerable about her posture, a softness that her professional armor usually concealed. Thank you for today, Ben said, joining her at the window. Emma had a great time. So did I, Fiona replied, turning to face him. It's been a long time since I spent a day just living, no emails, no calls, no crisis to manage. And now, Ben asked, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Now I'm wondering if you're going to kiss me, Fiona said with unexpected directness. Because I've been thinking about it for weeks. Ben's heart hammered against his ribs. I've been thinking about it too, he admitted. But I wasn't sure if Fiona closed the distance between them, pressing her lips gently against his. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepening as Ben's arms encircled her waist. When they finally pulled apart, both were slightly breathless. Well, Fiona said, a smile playing at her lips. That answered that question. Ben laughed softly, keeping her close. For the record, I'm accepting the job because it's a good opportunity and I believe in what you're trying to create, not because of this. He kissed her again, briefly, though this is definitely a nice bonus. Noted, Fiona replied, her eyes sparkling. And for the record, I offered you the job because you're talented, not because of this. She mimicked his gesture, kissing him lightly. Though this is indeed a very nice bonus. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change and adjustment. Ben started his new position at Lynch Innovations, throwing himself into the challenge of designing a furniture line that married sustainability with craftsmanship. Emma thrived in the company childcare center, making friends and excelling in the educational programs offered there. And Fiona brought a joy to their lives that Ben hadn't realized was missing. She was careful about her relationship with Ben at work, maintaining professional boundaries, but evenings and weekends were different. She became a fixture at their apartment, helping Emma with homework, joining them for movie nights, or simply sharing quiet moments with Ben after Emma was asleep. They took things slowly, both aware of Emma's feelings and the potential complications their relationship could bring. But as summer turned to fall, it became increasingly clear that what they had found together was something rare and precious. 6 months after the fire, Ben and Emma moved into a small house that Ben purchased with his new salary, a fixer-upper with good bones and unlimited potential. Fiona helped them paint and decorate, her designer shoes abandoned for old sneakers as she wielded a roller alongside them. On the night, they finished renovating Emma's room complete with a new custom bed and bookshelf that Ben had built. Fiona stood in the doorway watching as Ben tucked his daughter in. Do you like your new room, sweetheart? Ben asked. Emma nodded sleepily, clutching the stuffed rabbit Fiona had given her all those months ago. It's perfect, Daddy. She looked past him to where Fiona stood. Fiona, will you come say good night too? Fiona's expression softened as she approached the bed. Good night, Emma, she said, leaning down to kiss the girl's forehead. "I'm glad Daddy saved you from the fire," Emma said matter-of-factly, "even though it was scary when he went back inside." "Me too," Fiona replied, her voice thick with emotion. "Are you going to stay with us forever?" Emma asked, the directness of childhood catching both adults off guard. Fiona glanced at Ben, uncertainty in her eyes. They hadn't discussed long-term plans, both content to let their relationship develop naturally. Ben took Fiona's hand, squeezing it gently. "I think that's something Fiona and I need to talk about, Em, but we both care about you very much." "I hope you stay," Emma said around a yawn. "You make Daddy smile a lot." After Emma had fallen asleep, Ben and Fiona sat on the porch swing he'd built, a blanket wrapped around their shoulders against the autumn chill. "She's right, you know," Ben said after a comfortable silence. "You do make me smile a lot." Fiona leaned her head against his shoulder. "You both make me smile too, more than I ever expected." About what Emma asked, Ben began, feeling suddenly nervous. "It's okay," Fiona said quickly. "She's 8. Kids ask big questions without realizing it." "But it's a fair question," Ben persisted. "Where do you see this going, Fiona?" "Us, I mean." Fiona sat up straighter, looking into his eyes. "I see something I never thought I'd find. Someone who values me for who I am, not what I am. Someone who challenges me and supports me in equal measure." She took a deep breath. "I love you, Ben, and I love Emma. I can see a future with you both if that's what you want too." Ben's heart swelled at her words. "When I carried you out of that burning building, I had no idea I was rescuing my own future," he said softly. "I love you too, Fiona, and yes, I want a future with you." 1 year to the day after the fire, Ben and Fiona stood together in a small garden ceremony, exchanging vows in front of their closest friends and family. Emma, serving as flower girl, beamed with pride as she watched her father marry the woman who had become such an integral part of their lives. "Who would have thought," Fiona whispered during their first dance, "that nearly dying in a fire would lead to the happiest day of my life?" Ben pulled her closer, marveling at the journey that had brought them to this moment. Sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. As they swayed together under twinkling lights, surrounded by the people they loved, Ben reflected on how completely their lives had transformed in a single year. From the ashes of that devastating fire had risen something beautiful, a family forged through courage, kindness, and the kind of love that only happens when you're brave enough to open your heart to new possibilities. 2 years later, their family expanded with the birth of twin boys, completing the circle of love that had begun on that fateful night. Ben continued to lead the furniture design department at Lynch Innovations, his creations earning acclaim for their beauty and sustainability. Fiona balanced her role as CEO with motherhood, finding a fulfillment in family life that had been missing in her success. And Emma, now 11, flourished in the loving environment they created together, proudly telling anyone who would listen the story of how her dad had rescued a woman from a burning building, not knowing she was a CEO or that she would one day become the center of their world.